What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the tower. So today I'm going to be going over all the battle conditions. I'll kind of just talk about like how they affect the game, like what exactly they do and stuff like that, and then maybe a few ways to counter them. And yeah, I'll also just play some background footage of gameplay that has the condition. So yeah, let's get into it. So I'm going to start off with the resistance ones. They just have resistance on the end of the name. So first off, we have death ray resistance. So yeah, all it does is reduce how much damage your death ray does. It's not really like a percent of wave health at all. It's actually a percent of like the enemy's health. So yeah, whatever like the actual battle condition says, the percent, that's how much it'll do to each enemy. This one's not usually too bad. There's a few cases where it can be pretty bad though. I think the main one is if there's Protector's Ultimate and you have the Death Ray Mastery. It just makes it a lot harder to kill them. And then maybe if there's Orb Resistance as well. But yeah, without either of those, I would say it's not usually too bad by itself. Yeah, you're probably fine to take it off if there actually is that resistance. It probably won't make too much of a difference in most cases, having it on with the resistance. So yeah, maybe if you like need the card slot or something, that could be nice to take off. Next up, we have Orb Resistance. This one reduces the amount of orb damage the enemies take. So I'd say overall, this one's not that bad. This one is made a lot easier with the battle condition reduction lab. I'll mention like which battle conditions the lab is really good for, and this is definitely one of them. Death Ray kind of is as well, but I don't think it's quite as good on Death Ray. But yeah, with the Orb Resistance, you gain a lot of extra damage on your orbs with that lab. So you can still kill enemies in like 4 or 5 hits, in tournaments at least, which is pretty nice. But yeah, it's usually not too bad, even without that lab. Luckily, it also doesn't reduce your orb boss hit damage, which is kind of a big factor why it doesn't really make too much of a difference. Because yeah, as long as you can still deal full damage with your orbs to bosses, it's usually not going to affect that much. And next up, we have Thorns Resistance. This one reduces the amount of thorns damage enemies take. This one can be really bad sometimes. I think starting off like with like a EHP or hybrid build at all, this one just makes it so much harder. Since you're kind of relying on your thorns to finish enemies off sometimes with either of those builds, it just makes you take so much extra damage. So going over to a glass cannon build, it's not actually as bad as either of those, but it can still cause you to take extra hits sometimes. It's definitely not quite as bad if you have the energy shield mastery. It will just push enemies back that hit you. But even then, if you get like a Defy or something as glass cannon, it's not going to push the enemy back, so you have to kill it pretty fast if you don't want it to hit you again. So yeah, I wouldn't really say there's a way to counter this one. It kind of just makes it a little bit harder. Next up, we have Plasma Cannon Resistance. So this one's actually pretty similar to Thorns, but it just reduces the amount of damage that your Plasma Cannon does. So you pretty much just have to deal a lot of extra damage to bosses. That's the main thing. And then if they do get to you with that, they won't die from one Thorns hit, assuming you didn't do enough damage. So it is kind of similar to Thorns in that way. But if you do have the Plasma Cannon Mastery, then Elites will also take less damage from the Plasma Cannon. And yeah, especially for Rays, if you have a good Chain Lightning Plus, it's going to reduce your percent damage on them by a lot. So yeah, that would be the only major factor that it decreases, but it still does make it harder to kill bosses. That's the other main thing. And yeah, it's not quite as bad on vampires or scatters if you have the mastery. And next up, we have Knockback Resistance. This one reduces how much knockback the enemies take. So this one can be pretty bad sometimes. At my level, this one really doesn't do anything. But if you don't have as good like slows, this one can hurt, like especially doing like fast ultimate or something. The battle condition reduction lab is also really good for this one. Increases the amount of knockback you do by a lot just by leveling that up a few times. So yeah, if you have any problems with this condition, I would say do the lab a few more times and then see where you're at from there. But it can also be pretty bad with like elites, like specifically scatters. If you have any problems with scatters, this one makes those a lot harder as well. Of course, it's not going to affect bosses or rays. Yeah, even like affecting the other enemies, like during fast ultimate mainly. Like if there's fast ultimate and knockback resistance, then the ranged enemies are going to be pretty fast. They could probably get in your range line and get a shot off pretty quickly. So next up, we have enemy attack speed. This one increases the attack speed of the enemies. This one can be really hard sometimes, especially for me since I die to rays most of the time. It makes their charge so much faster. And yeah, if you're having problems with ranged enemies, that can also be really bad for them. They can definitely get a few quick shots off. Yeah, the main thing is with the rays, like I said. But also with like Thorns Resistance, this one can be really bad together. If you don't have like Energy Shield Mastery and a boss gets on you, then they can just take all your shields off. Just hit you really fast. They don't take any Thorns damage pretty much. So yeah, that can be a really bad combo sometimes. But yeah, I would say overall the main thing is with rays. Just having that battle condition by itself. So yeah, getting more things to counter those would help with that. Next up, we have more enemies. This one just spawns more enemies. I don't think this one's really that bad. Most of the time, it's not going to do anything. It can actually be helpful sometimes, giving you more landmines for stuns on other enemies. Can maybe be bad if you're getting overwhelmed though during like fast ultimate or something. But I would say any other case, it's not going to be that bad. Maybe basics ultimate, you could consider it bad there since you have a higher chance to spawn more bosses. But yeah, most of the time it's fine. It's not really going to change your build at all. Next up, we have enemy speed. And this one doesn't actually affect a lot of players. If you can make it over like 1200 to 1300 waves in Legends, this one's not going to actually affect you. It doesn't actually increase the enemy's max speed. It just increases how fast their speed maxes. So it usually maxes around, I think, 11 or 1200. I'm not sure on the exact number, but somewhere around that. And this battle condition will just make it max around wave like 800 or 900 or something like that. So yeah, it doesn't increase the actual speed, just how fast they speed up. So as long as you're getting to that cap and surviving, you'll be fine. This one's really not going to do anything. But yeah, it could be bad in the case where you're not actually making it to the max enemy speed. Next up, we have armored enemies. With this one, the enemies get a certain amount of armor, which you have to hit them that many times to break the armor, and then you can finally actually deal damage to them. So this one's not usually too bad. The only real case where this one can be harmful is if you have Chain Lightning Plus. The armor can actually eat some of those shots up. So you get 100 Chain Lightning Plus hits, but you can lose some of those if any of them get used up on breaking armor. So yeah, that can be really bad if you have a high Chain Lightning Plus and you like need it to kill protectors. So yeah, if you have Chain Lightning Plus, it'll just reduce your damage by a little bit on all those enemies that Chain Lightning Plus is effective on. But yeah, other than that case, it's really not too bad. You can break armor really fast if you have Chain Lightning. Chain Lightning and projectiles do a really great job. So yeah, usually not too bad. Next up, we have ultimate weapon durations. This one just reduces the duration of some of your ultimate weapons. And for a lot of people, this one's really hard. If you don't have 70 seconds on your chrono field, then this one's definitely going to lose you some waves. Since, yeah, you're not going to have 100% uptime chrono field. And then, yeah, the more developed you have your chrono field, then the harder it's going to be pretty much. But yeah, if you do have that 70 seconds, it's not too bad. The main things are you kind of lose the poison swamp duration and the black hole duration. Those are the main ones. You're not going to really need the black hole duration a lot of the time, but if there's Protector's Ultimate, that could hurt with that one. And then, yeah, the poison swamp duration is just going to be less consistency with that. So yeah, I would say if you have that 70-second chrono field, this one's going to be pretty dependent on the other conditions, how bad it's going to be, and how much it's going to hurt you. So yeah, pretty specific case for that one. And it's also not affected by the battle condition reduction lab. Going to reduce everything by that full 10 seconds, no matter what. So yeah, the effectiveness of this one varies a lot. So now we're moving on to the ultimate enemies. So you'll be able to tell an enemy's ultimate when their like cube, I guess, or their visual is kind of filled in with their particular color. We're going to start off with the two most common ones. First up, we have Tank's Ultimate. So this one gives tanks the ability to act like bosses. And they slowly move towards your tower, and then they do stop at one point. So they don't actually go to hit you, but they pretty much just act like tanks. So they get close to your tower and soak up a lot of damage. This one's also in the regular tiers, tier 17 and tier 18, and then sometimes in the tournaments. So a lot of these ultimate enemies can be confusing. Some of them are affected by a few things, while some of them aren't. So yeah, I'm going to go over those and then also talk about how tough they are. So Tank's Ultimate, the enemies do not take knockback. They are not affected by death ray either. They do take 2% orb damage with the orb boss hit though. And then they have a lot of extra health. But yeah, sometimes this one can actually be good if you use Chain Lightning as your main damage source. You get a lot of extra bounce shots, so that can increase your damage by a lot. But yeah, you can still get overwhelmed by them if you don't have enough slow or something. But yeah, luckily there is a downtime in tier 17 and tier 18. And then there also is in tournaments if you have the battle condition reduction lab. So that one's pretty good for this as well. But yeah, usually Tank's Ultimate's not going to be too bad. I think with Protector's Ultimate it can be pretty bad though, since they can push the tanks into your tower and you can get hit by that. But yeah, without that it's not going to be too tough. And yeah, like I said, it can help you. And yeah, moving on to Protector's Ultimate, like I kind of just talked about. Protector's Ultimate does a few things. Gives the enemy shockwave, knockback, and black hole damage immunity. But they do take death ray damage if you have the mastery, and then they do not take orb damage. And oh yeah, I don't think I mentioned that for the Tank's Ultimate either. The shockwave does not push back Tank's Ultimate. So yeah, Protector's Ultimate is pretty tough most of the time. You've heard me talk about this a lot in the past. But yeah, they also just ignore any stuns and slows. They kind of had just their own speed that they give to any enemy in their radius. The one thing that can't stop them though is Black Hole. So Black Hole is really nice to have on if there's Protector's Ultimate as a battle condition. I'd say the main way to counter it would be either the Death Ray Mastery or Chain Lightning Plus at a high level if you have that. The main thing would just be higher range besides having Black Hole on. That can help sometimes. And also Stunbot if you have that. You can't get hit by enemies that are in Stunbot with the Protector's Ultimate. So yeah, if you have a horde of enemies on your tower from that, but Stunbot is active, they can't hit you at all, which is nice. They could once that ends though. So yeah, you just have to be careful about that. And then also if you have the battle condition reduction lab, make the Protector's ultimate not have 100% uptime. So similar to Tank's ultimate, it does the same thing. So yeah, Protector's ultimate's pretty variable. It can be kind of tough sometimes. But yeah, luckily there's a few ways to counter it. Next up, we have Basic's ultimate. This one just has a chance to make every basic that spawns into a different type of enemy. This one by itself is not usually too bad, unless it has a few other conditions with it. It kind of just buffs other battle conditions, that's the main thing it does. So how the basics actually work with Basic's ultimate? They themselves aren't actually affected at all by the ultimate. They can still take orb damage, they can take death ray damage, they get affected by black hole, they can get knocked back, shockwave still pushes them back. All it really does is spawn a bunch of other enemies. You're going to be seeing a lot more ranged enemies, fast enemies, tanks, and then the main things are bosses and protectors. You're going to definitely be seeing a lot more of those. I think with Protector's ultimate, this one can be kind of tough, since you're just going to be seeing so many more protectors with the ultimate. And yeah, like same thing with bosses. If there's like hard boss conditions like boss's ultimate and plasma cannon resistance, the bosses can be kind of tough. Yeah, there's not really much you can do specifically for Basic's ultimate, but yeah, it just requires a lot more damage consistency. So yeah, super dependent on the conditions as well. Next up, we have Boss's ultimate. So this one doesn't actually change how the bosses interact with anything else. This one gives bosses overhealth, so they get a bunch of extra health, which can sometimes make it hard to kill them, especially if you rely on orbs to kill bosses. It's going to be really tough to kill them with orbs with the boss's ultimate, since they get double health if you don't have the lab, and then if you do have the lab max, they only get 80% extra health. But yeah, it's still a lot of extra health, a lot more orb hits to kill them, and then yeah, a lot more damage. So yeah, I mean, there's not really anything extra you can do besides maybe like a little bit higher range, better orb positioning, kind of set your orbs up for bosses only. Just trying to maximize orb hits on bosses. And then this one can also kind of be like a Thorns Resistance, kind of similar to what I said with the plasma cannon one, since it's going to take multiple hits to kill them with thorns if you don't get them low enough. Next up, we have Ranged Ultimate. So this one allows the ranged enemy's projectiles to disable your tower's projectiles for a certain amount of time. The base is for 1 second. This one can be tricky sometimes. The actual effect they get won't actually do much if you have the Energy Shield Mastery, but if you don't have that mastery, it can be pretty tough. The main thing is like the extra effects they get, so they do take knockback still, and I think if you have the Death Ray Mastery, they take Death Ray damage. I'm not sure if it's the Death Ray Mastery or just Death Ray itself, but with that, I know with the Mastery Max, they take 50% of their health from Death Ray, which I think is a bug. They do take 2% orb damage. You can still push them back with Shockwave, but they are not affected by Black Hole. So yeah, like with like Knockback Resistance, that can be tough sometimes. The main way to counter this one though is a little bit higher range, and turning off Black Hole actually does a good job. Since they are not actually going to get sucked in by Black Hole, other enemies could push them forward to shoot you. So if you have that off, then that can't happen, right? So that's a pretty good counter to that if you're having problems with them during the ultimate. The battle condition reduction doesn't actually reduce the uptime, since they just have 100% uptime. It's not part of the actual ability. But yeah, it does reduce how long they disable your tower's projectiles. Next up, we have Fast's ultimate. This one is probably the hardest battle condition in the game right now. It just speeds up any nearby enemies to match the fast speed, which is a lot. It's a very big speed increase. Even with like max slows, bosses can still pretty much just go right past your orbs. They really don't take that much orb damage most of the time. It just makes the enemies so much faster. And yeah, like I was saying, it can be really tough with like knockback resistance or something like that. Your stuns and slows are just going to be way less effective on all the enemies. So you kind of just need raw damage for those if you're using a glass cannon build. Using a higher range is good to counter bosses. But yeah, of course, that's going to reduce your other stuns a little bit. Yeah, the bosses are just really hard during Fast's ultimate. They have the same resistances as the ranged ultimate. They just can't go in Black Hole. But yeah, everything else works on them still. They do take that 50% death ray damage if you have that mastery. I assume it's with the mastery. But yeah, once again, I kind of think that's a bug. And still take the 2% orb damage, do take knockback, and are knocked back by the shockwave. And lastly, for the ultimate enemies, we have the Elite's ultimate. This one's only in tier 18. Doesn't appear in tournaments at all right now. So it just makes Rays shoot 2 times. Scatters split 1 extra time, and then Vampires drain twice as fast. This one's not going to do much unless you're dying to Rays, but I think a lot of people are kind of in that stage. But yeah, this one's pretty simple. Other than that, it doesn't affect how the elites interact at all with anything else. Pretty much just gives them an extra effect or increases their current effect. Next up, we have more bosses. And this one's really simple. It just increases how often bosses spawn. In Legends tournaments, a boss spawns every 5 waves. And I think that does go down by 1 wave every tournament tier. And then same thing with tier 18. One spawns every 5 waves. And I think it goes down each tier as well there. I think tier 14 would be a boss every 9 waves, and then yeah, going up 1 each tier there as well. I'm not sure exactly how the scaling works for the lower leagues, but I think it's a similar type of scaling. And yeah, next up we have the enemy level skip reduction. So this one's only in the Legend League tournaments. It simply just reduces your enemy level skips. Just reduces the chance. It doesn't actually show in the workshop that it reduces the chance though. So it's a little weird, but it actually does reduce the chance of you getting skips. It doesn't actually max until wave 1000, so you can still get some pretty good skips if you max it early before wave 1000. You can get a lot of extra skips using that. So yeah, I mean, all it really does is just decrease the amount of waves you're going to get in Legend League. Just makes the scaling pretty harsh though. For me, the enemies gain like 1,000 times their health every around 800 waves, which is pretty fast. And then these last 2 I'm going to talk about are specific to tournaments. There's always one of them, and they switch out with each other. So we have energy shields down first. This one just makes your energy shields take longer to charge. Which can be tough if you like lose a bunch of energy shields quickly. It's going to take a lot longer to charge those back. But yeah, since it trades out with the other one, which is Death Defy down, you still get the full Death Defy chance, which is good if you have the Berserker Mastery. You can get a lot more Viking Funerals with that. And then yeah, speaking of the Death Defy down, this one just decreases your Death Defy by 30%. The Battle Condition Reduction lab's actually really good for this one, since you can still have a decent Death Defy chance, even with the Battle Condition. And also if you have the substat. If you have the lab max with the substat, you can still get like 11%, which is actually not that bad. It's definitely a lot lower, but I mean, that's still a solid chance for Death Defies. The perk of that one is though that you get your energy shields back a lot faster. So yeah, it changes the gameplay a little bit. Kind of makes it interesting. So yeah, that's every battle condition in the game right now. They definitely changed the gameplay up a lot, whether it would be tournaments or just regular tiers with the battle conditions. There's some really interesting combos you can see in tournaments sometimes that makes stuff really hard. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and leave those in the comments. And yeah, see ya.